Welcome to Career View. This is the podcast where we ask the questions you want to know when it comes to pursuing a career path. I'm your host, Andrew Correll, and I will ask questions on behalf of students across the country from secondary schools and universities on what they want to know when it comes to pursuing their dream job. For today's episode, we will be asking the most requested questions that have been submitted by students on our Career View website who are aspiring to become a pilot. To answer these very interesting questions, I am joined by Ali Nasiriy, who is completing his instructor rating in Perth. So let's hear from them. Okay, and we are back on Career View. Amazing that we've been able to lock this in on such short notice. How's your morning been, Ali?
Good, Andrew. Good. Just chilling at the moment. A bit away from the studying, just relaxing this weekend.
Oh, beautiful. No, I love to hear that. So before we jump into the top questions asked by students, I have a personal question I'd like to ask you. So you're obviously quite young and you're a commercial pilot going through your flight instructor training. At what age did you start flying?
So flight training for me started at the age of 12. It was a birthday present by my parents, a scenic flight around Perth, and that pretty much confirmed for me that I wanted to be a pilot. Because I remember as soon as we landed, I was to my mum, I want to buy a plane and this is the career for me. And yeah, it pretty much started then till now, and it's still going.
Yeah, wow. So you knew you wanted to be a pilot really young. You bugged your mum into getting you a scenic flight at the age of 12 and you jumped in the plane within, that's such a lovely story. And then you pretty much started lessons from there, was it?
Pretty much, yeah. So I started from 12 while going through school as well. And then at the age of 15, I went on my first solo. And then at 16, I got my recreational pilot's license. 18, I got my private pilot's license, and 19, commercial pilot's license.
Wow, what a story. You're pretty much at the bottom end of the age bracket for each of those achievements.
That's right.
That is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
So, okay, now let's jump into the top questions asked by students. How do I prepare for and pass the various written and practical exams required for pilot certification?
Yes, a very good question, Andrew. Look, just like anything else outside of aviation, it's good to have a good understanding and theory-based knowledge on what's going on, and then we can get into the practical side of things later on. Now, speaking of the written side of things in aviation, when you start flight training, you'll pretty much be put into a ground school. Ground school is just like a classroom at school, primary school and high school, and you learn the fundamentals of aviation. Now, while you go through that, you'll be given books to study on the different subjects. An example of a book that I used was Bob Tate. He did some very good aviation books and they really helped me throughout. Now, when you read those books and you have the theory down pat, you think you know everything, you can do the practice exams at the end, which will pretty much be an indication if you are ready or not for the CASA exams. Now, what are the CASA exams? CASA is Civil Aviation Safety Authority. It's the issuing for licensing within Australia, and they are like the final boss you need to beat to finish the written side of things. Now, their pass marks around 70% for the exams. Now, a good way to look into those exams is on the CASA website. They have a pretty deep description about that exam, how much it costs, what you need, and what are the common errors. So it's very good prior to setting that exam to look at the common errors and say to yourself, hey, I know how to answer that topic. Now, CASA exams, they're very wordy. So they kind of do test your English skills as well and how you can interpret that question. So it's very important you understand and read that question and do not rush. Now, if you feel like you are slightly struggling, there are websites that can help you with the practice exams and expose you to a larger bank of questions. Another example is pilot practice exams. I use that throughout my training as well, which really helped me as well. So that's pretty much the written side of things, Andrew.
Yep, no, that all sounds fair enough. And yeah, you're pretty well bang on about the wordy aspect of it. It's happened once or twice where I get my knowledge deficiency report after the exam with my mark attached to it and see the questions that I got wrong, and I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, but no, I know that. Like, how have I got that wrong? And I probably misread a question or an answer and didn't quite realise it. So a very easy way to throw away a few marks, and you'd hate for that to be the difference between passing and failing in an exam.
That's exactly right. Now, moving on to practical aspect. Now, once you understand the theory side of things, you've got to move on to the practical. And that's pretty much showing that you can fly the plane itself. To be honest, that's all experience. It differs person to person. Some are stronger at theory than flying, and some are stronger at flying than theory. Now, it's all the matter of time spent in the air and how dedicated you are. With your instructor, so you'll have a flight instructor, he'll always be there to aid and help you if you need, and you can discuss anything you're worried about with him prior to a flight test, depending what flight test you're sitting. CASA has a flight test form, and it pretty much has boxes on what you need to tick off on that day. And you can have a good read through and you can see, hey, I need working on that. I need working on this. And you can show that to your instructor, and your instructor would help you out in the air to improve that skill. That's pretty much practical side of things.
Yeah, that's it. So passing a flight test is literally just satisfy everything on that form, and I guess you can't be failed. It's as simple as that. So no, that's really, really good advice, and we'll take that and we'll move on to question number 2. So how long does it take to become a pilot from the start of training to obtaining a commercial pilot's license?
Okay, so it's very dependent on the path you want to take, okay? So, for example, I'll put myself into perspective. So I did private training when I was 12 all the way till 15, 16. And to be honest, I was going at my own pace. I was flying once a week and I had school going on as well. I may not fly for a while. So that's going at my own pace. It would take more than a year, because I had other priorities like school. But say if you're not at school, you're committed, you can go a few days a week, then it can take a bit over a year, 2 years. And then you have the integrated full-time route, which is 12 months. Now, that's probably the fastest. I did that when I became 17. I joined a full-time integrated course at flyingcollege, and that took me just a bit over 12 months just to get the commercial pilot's license. Now, in aviation, there's a lot of goodies you can get, So I ended up getting a multi-engine rating, night VFR rating, multi-engine command instrument rating, and I'm doing my grade 3 instructor rating now. So obviously that's going to take more than 12 months. So I'm approaching nearly 2 years now since I started the integrated full-time course. But if you're solely asking commercial pilot's license in an integrated full-time course, I would say 12 months.
Yeah, nice. So I can go from 0 to a commercial pilot's license in 12 months, providing everything goes well, you're a good student, and say the weather's good and you don't get too many flights cancelled.
That's right. So sometimes the weather may not favour you, and that's going to set you back even further.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so with that commercial pilot's license, what can I do with the commercial pilot's license, and what's the difference between that and then, say, flying big jets, for example? What license do I need for that?
Yep. So the commercial pilot's license pretty much allows you to officially be able to get employed in the workplace in general aviation. Now, if you have a commercial pilot's license, it doesn't mean you're flying the airliners now, you're on Qantas. No, that's not happening. So if you like to go to the airlines, then you got to further your studies. So the airlines, it's called ATPLs. That's your Air Transport Pilot's License. And obviously that will take longer. Now, I know some places over east, they're doing them, it takes around 3 months. And obviously that's more money as well. It honestly depends what you're trying to get and what your goal is at the end of the day. And if you even want to get to the airlines.
Yeah, okay, no, perfect. So maybe full-time, we're probably looking at realistically, what are we saying, 1.5 years to do everything to work towards an air transport pilot license, maybe?
Yeah, I would say 1.5 years.
Okay. Yeah, that's a nice ballpark figure, I guess. Yep. So we can move on from that to number 3. What are the minimum educational requirements to become a pilot?
Again, it depends which pathway you're willing to take. So if you want to go to university, if you're doing it privately, if you're in an integrated full-time course, or cadet programs, right? Now, personally, I didn't go to uni or did cadet programs. I went private and integrated full-time. From my knowledge, they only required a high school diploma and a waste certificate. Now, there's something that I think is more important, and they'll test this on the day you go to the flying college. And it's called a COMPASS testing. And that pretty much stands for Computerized Pilot Aptitude Screening System. What does that test? It tests things like reading, writing, mathematics, psychomotor, and psychotechnical skills. Now, to be honest, that's more important than your high school diploma and WACE, because that will pretty much show if you are capable of conducting that role.
Oh, so that's like it's almost like a pilot-specific exam and test, whereas I guess your WACE certificate is just kind of a general educational certificate. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe not the best student in high school, but someone with clear aptitude can still become a pilot.
And that's right, Andrew.
Yep.
And I'm not really sure on the university and cadet programs, but they may differ.
Yeah, okay. No, that's really, really good and really interesting to hear. So that was the full-time integrated course with the COMPASS test at the start. Yeah, okay.
Correct.
Nice. Okay. So moving on to question number 4, how much does pilot training cost, and are there any financial aid options available?
Okay, good question. So again, it depends how far you want to get in aviation, you know? You might just want to go, say you did a first solo. You might want to say you have a recreational pilot's license or a private pilot's license or commercial pilot's license, or advance that to ATPLs later on. Now, most people go to a CPL standard, and that's roughly, I would say, 100,000. Now, again, it depends. Are you doing that the private route? Are you doing that the vet funding route or the HEX route? Now, the good thing about private is that it's cheaper. It's coming out of your pocket and it's cheaper. But sometimes you may not be able to have the financial funds to pay it straight away. Okay? So I did a bit of private, and then later on I went onto vet fund. Now, the downside to that is the 20% loan fee, which isn't the best, but at the end of the day, it is what it is.
So while it might be 20%, I mean, $100,000, that is a lot of money. But
it is.
If I don't have that money in my back pocket, which unfortunately, well, I do not have that sort of money in my back pocket, I can still fly though, is what you're saying. I can still go to flight school, but I've just got a slightly more expensive loan.
Correct. So it's not the end of the day. That's the good thing. We're very lucky to live in a country like this, because not all countries can aid you like this. Because I know some countries, you got to be very academically smart to become a pilot, but here they give everyone a chance to have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure the highest ATAR person, actually, well, I can say for absolute certainty, the highest ATAR student will not make the best pilot. It's a different sort of range of skills. So that $100,000, that was for a commercial pilot's license. We haven't got a multi-engine instrument rating out of that, and we haven't got an air transport pilot license out of that. So how much are those sort of courses? Because I want to fly big jets, and I want to know how expensive it is to fly big jets, for instance. It's a very common question.
That's a very, very good question. So, Andrew, it really depends on what you're trying to get. So I'll give myself as an example, right? Bare bone CPL, it's around 100,000. If you want to go get your multi-engine rating, your command instrument rating, and then like myself, instructor rating, ATPLs, I would say you're looking at a range of 100,000 to 150, or even slightly more. It just depends.
Yeah.
Aviation, it's a lot of money. As soon as you walk in the door, it starts ticking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, gosh, a lot of money. Yeah. So I guess, that varies student to student. Some students, if they are really, really well prepared. They turn up, they've pre-read, and they just smash it once they do their lesson. I guess their lesson will be a bit shorter. That's more money back in their pocket. That's probably, there you go. So for all the students out there listening, I think what Ali might be hinting at there is be prepared and you'll save money, because we are talking about big numbers here.
Definitely.
Perfect. We can move on now to question number 5. What is the process for applying to and getting hired by an airline as a commercial pilot?
Okay, so let's just start off the basics, right? So you get your commercial pilot's license, you now need to get your job. So hopefully you find a job, which everyone will at the end of the day, in general aviation, flying small planes, and then you got to pretty much gain your experience in hours. Now, later on down the track, when you've met the experience requirements, airlines would set up an advertisement online. Now, a key note here is that every airline is different, but they do tend to follow a similar structure, which is a multiple stage process. Now, what you do, you pretty much go onto that job advertisement, and it will pretty much include information about the role, the hour requirements, the qualification requirements. For example, do your ATPLs need to be done? And if you meet those requirements, you can send in your resume. And then if that gets accepted, you'll go into a pre-interview, either being in person, on the phone, and they'll get to know a little bit about you. Now, if that goes forward, you'll go into an in-person interview where they do further testing, and there'll be more people there to see who you actually are. And they can test things like problem solving, how you are with problem solving, how you are with working with a team. And if you're all good with that, then you'll go further on into simulator testing, type ratings, and looking at emergency procedures within the simulator. And at the end of the day, they're not looking for perfection. If you're not there yet, they will work to get you there. And yeah, further on, background check, drug testing and medicals, and hopefully you'll get a job with them.
Yeah, wow. So we're not just looking at a simulator, how well you fly the plane. There's a lot more to it. How you interact with other people in those sort of panel exercises, how well, I guess, you interview, what you're like as a person, because I can imagine, in a big airliner, you've got 2 people flying the plane, not just you. So if you work really well in a team, that would obviously be highly beneficial to the airline. So yeah, there you go. Maybe the best pilot isn't necessarily the best airline pilot. There's a few different skills that you need to have there. That's really, really interesting. For question number 6, what are the opportunities for career progression within the aviation industry, such as becoming a chief pilot or a director of operations?
Okay, so you'll see a lot of companies in aviation, and each and every one of them will have different progression rates. So say if the company's brand new, obviously the progression rate is going to be very slow. Now, if they've been there for a while and they've been established for a while, they're going to have a pretty quick progression rate. Now, it also comes down to yourself sometimes, the environment, how patient you are, and very importantly, who you know, which will later on help you to get that chief role. But the chief role comes with experience and time. Now, another important thing that's very important, not just in aviation, is the way you present yourself to the outside world. Because trust me, you will be getting monitored. Everyone will be watching you on how you present yourself and how you interact with one another. So that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really funny, well, especially where I am up in Broome. People get certain nicknames or word spreads very quickly about, so-and-so, they can't do a radio call or whatever. So yeah, there's definitely eyes and ears everywhere. So I think when you talk about how you progress and how you present yourself, I guess it's sort of small things you maybe don't really necessarily realize are being monitored, but people know. So yeah, there's certainly eyes and ears everywhere watching you, and that feeds back to the company and maybe affects how you progress. Just one thing I'll quickly add on that as well is during COVID, there was no hiring from the higher ups. So everyone was sort of stuck in place as well. So how quick you can progress as a pilot can also be a function of what's happening at, we'll say, Qantas, Virgin, Alliance, whatever, all of those more desirable airlines. If they're hiring, that means it's sucking people up and maybe an opportunity to be a chief role at a smaller company might just come up for you. So yeah, very much the opportunities will be there. The timeframes to get there, gosh, it can vary so much depending on what's happening in the industry and how you're going. Could you put a number on it? I don't know. I mean, it varies so wildly. I don't really think you can. Yeah, a very, very interesting question, but a very, very hard one to quantify, that's for sure. For number 7, what are the typical working hours and schedules for pilots, and how does it vary between commercial, cargo, and private pilots?
Okay, so commercial, cargo, and private. So let's just break commercial down, which is pretty much larger aircrafts, and we can put that as the airliners.
Yep.
Cargo, which is pretty self-explanatory.
Yep.
And private pilots can be our general aviation small aircraft, charter, instructing, for example. Now, for commercial, that's different with every airline. They generally get 12 days off every month, and obviously you can earn extra money if you work on your days off, providing you don't exceed your flight duty periods. With cargo working hours are mainly during the night when everyone's asleep. So if you like working at night, that's the role for you. Now, private pilots, charter pilots, for example, that can depend on the season up north, if it's a wet season or dry season, and when tourists are up there. And instructing, summer would be the best for instructing, because obviously most students are fairly new. They want good weather, light wind conditions, so they can learn the basics. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds, very, very variable, I guess. Certainly at the top, they quoted this as a commercial operation. I guess we kind of corrected that to an air transport airline sort of thing. Yeah, much more consistent. Yeah, 12 days off a month. Cargo, backside of the clock is quite often, I guess, there. And then, what the students quoted as private pilots, I guess. Yeah, I guess seasonal is one of the things. Would you say more daytime though?
Yeah, more daytime.
Yeah, that's good. Good for your body clock and circadian rhythm there.
That's right.
And we'll finish off with question number 8, our last question. What are the financial and pension options available for pilots, and how can I plan for my financial future?
Okay, so this is obviously something I'll learn myself later on down the track, but I'm guessing it's more targeted towards the superannuation side of things. So let's just have a look at it. It's like, as a pilot, you'll most likely be on a very good income when you're in the airlines, so you don't really have to worry about this too much. Now, some companies tend to pay above the standard rate for super, such as the RFDS I know and the Police Air Wing. Now, I believe the retirement age here in Australia is 65 as an airline pilot. Now, at the end of the day, it's not over. If you do finish at the airlines, you can come back to general aviation, do ground school teaching, or you can even do flying and teaching students. A great example of mine is my instructor. He's a senior age and he's still flying. So yeah, it's not the end of the world when you retire.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, my first ever boss, she was 77 and she was still flying. Yeah, so it very much varies on the operation, I guess. But yeah, airlines, I think in Australia, 65 is the hard age. America might be 67. They bumped it up 2 years, I think, to combat the pilot shortage. Yeah, but yeah, absolutely spot on. Like, how many times do you go down to a local flight school and you see someone who is over the age of 65 and still flying because they just couldn't give it up, but they're just not allowed to fly for the airlines, but you can fly somewhere else. So yeah, it sounds like, I guess, the retirement and pension options, look, you'll probably be okay, but if you want to keep flying past the age 65, earn a bit more money, you're more than welcome to. So thank you, Ali. That's all of our questions for today. For our listeners who have more questions for Ali that did not feature on our list today and would like to connect, just visit the CareerView website at careerview.com.au. This is where you'll find Ali's profile and you can send him more questions. And with every episode, please don't forget to submit your questions that you want to know, especially to young professionals who have been there and done it. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. And have you got any final words of advice to aspiring pilots out there?
Oh, it's a pleasure being on this podcast, and I hope my voice gets out there and inspires someone out there and helps someone who wants to get in aviation. Yeah, that's all from me for today.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Until next time.